Thank you for coming today. My name is Angie, and my husband Larry and I have been traveling all over the United States and into Canada as we've taught this class that you will see today. Most people, when we come and teach these classes, they want to know a few answers to a few questions. And the first is, what is glycobiology? Who are we, and why do we teach this class? And so I'm going to answer those questions for you here in the introduction. Glycobiology is the science that studies sugar. There are many sugars in nature, over 200 sugars in nature. We're all very familiar with the kind of sugar that we eat every day. But there are other sugars that most of us have no idea are important for how our immune system functions. And that's what this class will give you an overview on. And Larry will do a very good job, a thorough job with that. This class is actually geared for healthcare professionals. However, we always encourage the public to attend, and we're always happy when lots of public does come. But if you are a healthcare professional here today, we have coupons if you would like to continue on with continuing medical education. We have coupons for you that you can take and be able to use and give it a little bit of a discount for your classes that you'll take for CME. I think it's about 16 credits that you can get, so see us after class if you would like to pursue that. That is actually our desire and our hope. We hope that we'll give you enough information that you will have a good foundation so that you can springboard on to continuing medical education. Who are we and why do we teach this class? As I said, we have been teaching all over the country, in almost every state, and in Canada since 2004. My husband Larry graduated from the United States Air Force Academy and served a career in the Air Force, and then he decided to follow his passion for teaching and brought us right to poverty level basically because he loves teaching, and we decided you might as well have your second career with something you love to do. So he's been teaching math at the local high school in Colorado Springs, and because we had to supplement that income, he also went to the university and has taught graduate and undergraduate studies for 18 years at the university in several universities in Colorado Springs. So when we married 31 years ago, and we did exactly what I wanted to do, which was to raise a family, I was so blessed to be able to stay home. We have 6 children and 11 grandchildren now. And over the years, I recognized that my health was declining. Every year, in fact, it was getting more and more compromised, and I started really being concerned. I began seeing doctors, which I had never really seen doctors my whole life, but I started going to see doctors and getting help, and things cleared up, and I was doing okay. But over the years, I continued to decline, where I would be seeing my doctors more and more until finally I had 6 doctors, 4 specialists, and then knew that I had to do something if I was going to change the course of my situation. So I began to see a nutritionist also. My nutritionist was wonderful, very, very well respected, and she helped me over I would say the last 6 years with feeding my body food that she told me was necessary. And I was able to see some benefit. However, I continued to decline until I literally feared for my life. It was interesting. The reason why are we teaching this class is because the medical world and the nutritional world could not direct me to the science of glycobiology. It was actually a friend of mine. I taught water aerobics for 10 years, and she was in class, and she came and one day, knowing my situation somewhat, she just asked me, have you ever investigated glycobiology? And so why are we teaching these classes? It is because I hope that we can be an impact in getting this critical education to our healthcare professionals so that they can direct their patients, and also to the public, so the public has an idea that there is another option. It's not just medical, just nutritional world, that there are other options. And this science, the science of glycobiology, will open your eyes to this option, and I hope that it will be enough for you to further investigate on your own so you can know the impact for yourself or those that you love and care about. These are the specific sugars that we're going to be talking about today. These sugars are very familiar, the two on the left, but the other are very unfamiliar. Glucose and galactose are the two that we get in our diets every day. Unless you don't eat dairy, you don't get galactose either. But the 6 on the right are sugars that most people have never even heard of, have no idea that they are important and critical for how your immune system functions. Mannose, xylose, fucose, N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylgalactosamine, and N-acetylneurominic acid. These are 6 sugars that we should be eating in our diets, and yet they are gravely missing in our food chain today. And so this class will give you a foundation for why we must take a look at this and be able to utilize this information for ourselves and our families. This is who we send our healthcare professionals to, ProEvity. So if you are a healthcare professional here today, this is a small group, but if you are, you're welcome to go to proevity.com, and again, we have a coupon you could use and get some continuing medical education in this field, sanctioned by the AMA. I will just say quickly here, there was a huge amount of learning that we came in my journey for wellness. There was a huge amount of information and education that we were not prepared to, we just couldn't believe it. Actually, we weren't expecting it. I was taking 50 supplements from my nutritionist and believed that I had to do this in order to support my immune system, because I was getting more and more serious every year with my compromised immune system. When we came to find out about good manufacturing practices, the NSF mark, patents, I was really surprised. It made me wonder if any of the 50 things that I was taking was actually utilized and efficacious for my body. I really didn't know whether they were helping me or not, because I continued to decline every year. So I hope that you'll look into good manufacturing practices, understand what the NSF mark is, know what you're supplementing with. If you are supplementing with anything, make sure that you know that the supplements that you take into your body are actually efficacious for you, not just a claim that is made, and because it looks brilliant on the bottle and marketing is amazing, we think that we should be able to trust that. But just as an example, when you get green tea, for instance, you read the label and say all about the green tea that's there, and it sounds all so wonderful. But because it comes originally from green tea, they can make a claim based on that. But what they don't tell us, many nutritional supplements don't tell us, is what's happened from the actual source. Then they process, then it goes into the body, and that processing part, is it actually efficacious for your body after it has gone from the source to the bottle? So they can make the claim, but doesn't mean that we as consumers can go to the health food store and trust actually what we are consuming and putting into our body just based on what the label says. So look into good manufacturing practices, the NSF International Certification, and patents. All of those things were quite surprising information, and we just won't take a lot of time to go into that now, but very huge education that we received in this journey towards wellness. The last thing that I'll say is I was always telling my mind was always screaming out, basically, if there was anything so fantastic, so amazing, something that I absolutely had to have for my health, for my life, surely it would be all over the news. I would see it on the news. My doctors would know about it. My nutritionist would be able to direct me. I was so surprised what we learned, and that's why my blood started boiling and why I got a little bit passionate about being David who faces Goliath and a mom on a mission, because I said the average person has no idea that this science can make such a tremendous difference in the quality of their lives, because nobody is teaching it. Nobody is telling the average person. And yet if you go into the science world, it's everywhere. But it's not for us, the average person, and even our healthcare professionals, our nutritionists, they don't know either. So we're on a little bit of a mission, and yes, it's one drop in the bucket, but the bucket's filling up over the last 6 years, and we're really grateful, and we feel honored to be instrumental in helping to bring this education to you. And so thank you for coming tonight. We'll turn the time, I was gonna say, when I read the MIT's annual innovation periodical journal, or whatever it is that they put out annually, we saw this headline that glycomics was one of the top 10 technologies that would change the world. That was quite shocking to me, and I thought, how come I didn't see that on the 6 o'clock news? That's a pretty significant statement from a very reputable institution. How come the average person has never heard that? And so that helped me to know that I was not alone, that it wasn't something that was some obscure science somewhere, that this was something that people did know about. It's just the average person does not. So I will turn the time over to Larry, and he will give you the science part of the class, and then I'll wrap up at the end. Thank you so much.
It's good for me to be here. You've just met the flower in my life, and unfortunately I am the weed. So your eyes are going to have to take a little bit to get adjusted to this, but I'm indebted to this beautiful lady. She's beautiful not only on the outside but on the inside. This was the most important decision I made when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, was that I found her and married this beautiful girl. So we've been married for 31 years, and it's been incredible. I'm also indebted to this doctor, Robert K. Murray, who's a medical doctor and a PhD, and I'm referencing a lot of the material he has written and the things he's put together. So I want to express my appreciation to him. He is the author of Harper's Biochemistry Textbook, which is the textbook used in the majority of med schools here in the United States. The study of sugars, this particular slide made the biggest impact in my life. We're familiar with the ABO blood type group. I am type B blood and my wife is type A. 50% of those people here in the United States are type O. Type B, my blood type, is about 12%. AB, our son has type AB. About 4% of the population in the U.S. is type AB. What you may not know is on the outside of those red blood corpuscles, on each one of those red blood cells, are these sugars. And I have a legend down here, and I've expanded those sugars right next to it so you can see more clearly the particular sequence and order of these sugars. And they are in a particular sequence around these cells. You'll notice that Angie's blood has these particular 5 sugars. Hers starts with galactose and ends with N-acetylgalactosamine. Type B blood starts with galactose, and in fact the first 4 sugars are the same, but the 5th sugar on my blood type is also galactose, which is different than hers. What I didn't know was that there is no difference between these 2 blood types. In fact, all the blood groups, they are type A and type B, are identical. They're exactly the same, except for that 5th sugar that is on the outside of the red blood corpuscle, and it's the 5th one in a chain of 5. And that is the only difference between type A and type B blood. Now you know that if I was in an accident and I were to get Angie's blood, type A, into my type B body, would my body have a problem with that blood? It would definitely have a problem. If I had too much of her type A blood cells, my body would create antibodies and attack all of those red blood cells and try to kill them. That's why the literature talks about these sugars as being antigens. They're foreign to my body, and so my body will make antibodies to attack. But that's the only difference between the 2 blood types. 1 sugar. So 1 sugar had the power between life or death. And that to me was a huge statement for the impact of these sugars. Does the body know these sugars and the power if 1 sugar can make all that difference? So I was fascinated. I had to learn more. Type AB blood is called AB because it has those A sugar pattern and it has the B sugar pattern around its red blood corpuscle. It's also known as the universal receiver. They can receive blood from any type A or type B. It's not a problem. That's because they have each of those 5th sugars, and their body will take that blood from anyone and not react and create antibodies to it. Type O is called the universal donor. The reason they're the universal donor is because they don't have that 5th sugar there. The first 4 are exactly the same as type A or type B, but they don't have the 5th sugar, and so they can donate their blood to any of the other blood types, and their bodies will not see the offending sugar. So that to me was huge. And as I got into this field and started to look at the power of these sugar nutrients, I thought, wow, there's a lot more than just this. So I hope to be able to share some of that with you. I've got to define a few terms. Glyco is Greek for sweet. Glycoprotein is when you make a protein, amino acids, in a particular structure, and you add these sugars. They call them sweet proteins or glycoproteins. All of the cells, just like those red blood cells, every cell in your body, and you have about 60 trillion cells, every single cell in the human body has these sugars on the cell surface. They are everywhere, and they are around every cell. But below the cellular level, at the building block level, at the protein level, where these things, these raw materials are assembled, 50% of all human protein is glycoprotein. So these sugars are everywhere in your body. Glycosylation is the term, it's how the body's manufacturing plants attach these sugars and amino acids together and make these particular sequences and make glycoproteins and other glycoforms. It's similar to a car manufacturing plant. I don't know, we drive a Toyota. Does anybody else here drive a Toyota? Excellent. Great cars. You know, if you've ever visited a Toyota manufacturing plant, if you go, you'll see the front door. In the front door, they bring in the rubber and the steel, the plastic, the electronics, put it on a conveyor belt, and down this belt, robots and people start assembling these pieces together according to a master plan. And by the time they get to the end, out the back end drives a Toyota. Beautiful car. Doors open, close, it starts and stops. Well, occasionally it accelerates and it doesn't stop. Have you heard about that particular problem? That's a recent problem that Toyota has had. What was the cause of that problem? Well, they were missing a particular part. The car, you know, it looked like all the other cars, but when it got in a particular situation, a particular scenario, it would accelerate and they couldn't stop it. Now, in your body, you have these little raw manufacturing plants in every cell. They're called the Golgi apparatus and the endoplasmic reticulum. And they assemble these parts kind of like in a conveyor belt according to the DNA, a master plan, and they put these parts and pieces together, and they take all of this. But what happens if they reach for a piece, a particular nutrient, and they don't have that? They reach for mannose, they reach for xylose, maybe fucose, and there's no fucose. What does the body do? Well, it puts together these forms the best it can, and it puts these things out there. It looks like a glycoprotein, but when the immune system tries to read it, does it have a problem reading and translating what the message is? In particular situations and scenarios, problems start to arise. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but before I do that, I have 4 paradigms I have to talk to you about. I want to say what a paradigm is, and Mark Twain is the one I turn to tell us a little bit about it. He said, it's not what we don't know that prevents us from succeeding, it's what we know that just ain't so. And isn't that how it is? You think you know something, and it's just not necessarily right. But you won't know that. Kind of like, and you won't know that until you get to a point where more light and knowledge is received and somebody tells you about that. Otherwise, you'll continue to believe an old model. A particular model that was taught here maybe 400 years ago before any of us were around was the fact that the sun went around the earth, and that was the model that was taught. But then about 400 years ago, they changed that model and they said, no, the earth goes around the sun. Does everybody believe that here in Arizona? Yes? Excellent. That's what they teach in Colorado. And everywhere we've been in the last 10 weeks, the 16 states, they teach that. But I'll take my geometry honors class outside and I'll say, okay, let's come out here for about 20 minutes and talk about this. You prove to me what you believe, because I see the sun going around the earth every day of my life. It rises in the east and it sets in the west. And you believe a model that is 180 degrees out of that paradigm, that model. Why do you believe it? Prove it to me, because what I see with my own eyes is this. And they'll kind of, oh my gosh, well, they assure me they believe it, but they have no way to prove it. But they all believe it. And then that opens the door, and we go over some geometry, and we show them how you can show this, that in fact the Earth does go around the sun. And they believe it. But lots of times these models, when you're taught a model, you believe it, and it appears to be true, and everything seems to validate it, and yet it's completely wrong, or parts of it are not completely right. So these paradigms I have four, because when we teach in school and we teach healthcare professionals, particular models were taught in the past. And depending on when they went to school, then that will explain why they have a particular theory of belief. The first theory I want to talk to you about is this one. It says that sugar is only used for energy production. And sugar is used for energy production. They have to memorize the Krebs cycle, how the enzymatic reactions, how you generate from glucose, the ATP structures, and all of that Krebs cycle is memorized. But sugar is not just used for energy. It's the only up there that is the problem. These 8 sugars are used for some other things: cell-to-cell communication and identification. For example, it's these sugars on every cell of the body. My cells in my body, I'll say Larry's liver cell, Larry's kidney cell, Larry's heart cell. If I were to get a transplant from Angie, and all the cells in her body says Angie's kidney cell, Angie's liver cell, if I were to get a kidney transplant, would my body have a problem with that organ coming in? Of course. My immune system would begin immediately to attack it because it's foreign. The immune system says, Larry's kidney is who I'm looking for. This is foreign, and it will attack. So what do we do to maintain the transplant? Well, we suppress the immune system, don't we? We suppress it, and we make it really sluggish. Now, you'll keep the transplant, but you may die from pneumonia, the flu, some virus, because your immune system is so suppressed that it won't respond very quickly, and that's the trade-off, to save the transplant and risk these other diseases. Not only is those sugars responsible for that communication process, but they also are responsible for how cells hold on to each other. Cell adhesion. So these glycoprotein structures are how cells attach. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But cells holding on to cells form tissue, and tissue, of course, forms organs, and that's how you're created. I've got a picture to show this a little bit better. Over here on this right side, you'll see this is a cell membrane. This is the interior of the cell, and you'll see these structures. This is what a glycoprotein kind of looks like. These would be the amino acids or the protein structures. They link together in little boxcar like a train, linear, and they follow this curly track, but they're all linear. And then they come out here, and these are the sugars, the sweet part of it, the carbohydrate part of it right out here. And those things are bush-shaped structures, and they go off in all kinds of angles and limbs and branches and twigs, and they're three-dimensional, and they're very complicated looking, and they extend a long way. But that's what a glycoprotein looks like, and the medical literature also refers to them as cell receptors. This is how the cell receives information from the outside. From good guys and bad guys, you'll see toxins and virus and bacteria all connect to the cell at that juncture point, at the cell receptor. A bacteria or virus, like the HIV virus, will connect here. It will kidnap the manufacturing plants inside the cell, and instead of making those nice Toyota cars, it'll make HIV virus, and it will just start to replicate itself until it makes so many copies it bursts the cell, and then they spread to other cells and do the same thing. But they attach through these structures, through the glycoproteins. And the macrophages, the white blood cells, also attach and read the structure of those sugars, and they determine whether you are a friend to the body or you're an enemy, friend or foe. Over here is an artist's rendition of electron microscope picture of some spherical cells, and these hairy protrusions, those are the glycoproteins. That's what they look like at this magnification. Kind of hairy. You'll notice that there's a lot of them. There's not one or two, but that cell surface is covered with them. So these glycoproteins are everywhere. you'll see that that's how they adhere to each other. Right here you'll see them, these two healthy, normal-looking cells adhering to each other. That's how they hold on, how cells make tissue. Over here you'll see kind of an abnormal cell. You'll notice that's been kind of cratered out. It's not, doesn't have all of those glycoproteins. Looks more like a lunar landscape surface. It's got a few glycoproteins right here that's hanging on right here to this particular cell. When it loses those glycoproteins, then that cell will no longer attach to that other cell. And when it does, when we talk in cancer situations, we call that metastasis. The cell is free to travel through the lymphatic or the circulatory system to other parts of the body. If we could keep the cells from metastasizing, the great majority of cancers metastasize. If they would stay put, you could remove them surgically, or in the areas where you couldn't surgically remove them, you could use radiation. But once they metastasize, then it's hard to get them because they travel throughout the body. A couple more paradigms here. This one is taught again in med school. It wasn't until 1998 that this one was proven different. This theory said that there was a glucose-only pathway. All sugars changed to glucose, and from glucose the body can make all these other sugars. And it's true, there is a backup system the body has that can make these other sugars that Angie mentioned through this backup system. But it is not the primary system. In 1998, the French demonstrated that. They attached radioactive isotopes to galactose and mannose, and they tracked them through the body. And in the gut, these molecules were absorbed intact. They were never changed to glucose. So what that told us was that in the gut, and your gut represents 70% of your immune system, that you have cell receptors looking for these sugars. So what's the primary way to get these sugars into your body? It's to eat them. Otherwise, why would you have cell receptors in the body looking for these particular sugar molecules? Those scientists were so amazed by what they found and what they proved that they concluded that these specific dietary sugars could represent a new class of nutrient. Not only like vitamins and minerals, which we knew, but these sugar molecules now forming some sort of sugar nutrient that we were not really aware of till that. The other paradigm here on this slide says that there are no stomach enzymes that can break these beta-bonded bonds between these sugars. There are covalent beta bonds that hold these long sugars together. You have to break those bonds to make the shorter sugar chains so that the molecule can be absorbed because they're too long. The stomach has no enzymes, so this, again, theory was saying that you don't need to have this nutrient part of your diet because it's just expensive urine. It'll pass through the body. It has no way of breaking them down to utilize them. Well, it's true there are no enzymes in the stomach, but in January 2007, just 3 years ago, science was able to catch up and show that they were not broken down in the stomach. They were actually broken down by bacteria in the gut. And that's where they're broken down, but they are broken down. So again, when people have been trained under particular models, they may have particular viewpoints that reflects their particular training. So that's why we try to get this word out to folks so that they understand what the latest science is on these theories. And the last one I want to talk to you that I call the code of life. The code of life just refers to the immune system and how complicated and amazing the communication process must be for the immune system to handle, for example, a cut on your finger. When you get a cut in your finger, what is the immune response? There are a myriad of things that start to happen. Fibers are extended in this area as platelets aggregate to the cut site. The glycoproteins near that cut site get stickier. Macrophages that are in the circulatory system go into a rolling motion and glom onto the walls of those glycoproteins and stick there, and then the capillary does an interesting thing that it doesn't normally do. It opens to allow the macrophage to penetrate into that interstitial area and to attack the debris and the bacteria and fight. And the immune system is sending messages back and forth about sending me more of this, more of that, no more of this, I've got too much of that, I need this, I don't need that anymore. There's an incredible communication system just like a general fighting a war. what does it? We thought for a long time it was the amino acids. But these 20 amino acids only link linearly, and they cannot form enough letters in this coded alphabet to talk to 60 trillion cells. And I'm going to drop down to 8 sugars, but I'm going to tell you why they are. They are 3-dimensional. They're not 2-dimensional. They're actually 3-dimensional. Most of them are hexagonal, which means they are 6-sided. And at every vertex point, they can link, and they form incredibly long sugar chains. And every angle and every different sugar, a different sequence of sugar, just like the sugars we talked about on the red blood corpuscles, means something different to the body. In fact, we estimate that there are a potential of 1 × 10⁻14th chemically unique letters in this sugar code. Now, 1 × 10⁻14th is an incredible number. I wrote it up here for you. It goes almost halfway across the screen. It's a 1 followed by 14 zeros. The number is pronounced 100 trillion. That's incredibly huge. I will take my geometry honors kids who are 15 years old, and I will say to them, do you understand how big these numbers are? Well, I'm going to back this number down, and I'm going to take off those first 6 digits, and I'm going to replace that 0 right here in that 6th space with a 1. And when I put a 1 right here, that number becomes 1 billion, a 1 followed by 9 zeros. And a billion is a huge number. I ask them, do you know how big it is? And so I say, well, let me give you something to help you. If you had seconds, you know seconds go by very quickly, unless you're in Mr. Law's class, and then time seems to drag. But if I had a billion seconds, how long would that be? How long does a billion seconds take? And so they'll think for about 3 or 4 nanoseconds, and the hands will start to go up. And they'll say, oh, 3 days, Mr. Law, 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 years. And the class breaks up when they hear that one, because that's just totally ridiculous. And I'll just look down, and I'll look back up to that person, and I'll say, actually, it's 31.7 years. 31.7 years is what a billion seconds is. And this is a communication system that is 100,000 billions. That's a communication system that can talk to all the cells in our body. So it's a huge number. What does that really mean to us if we boiled all this down? If I boiled the immune system down to something that we can get our hands and our minds around, I would talk to you about a normal immune system. A normal immune system is a system that's, it just does everything it's supposed to. It's kind of boring. It does everything it needs to do, and you don't hear much from it, and you're happy. You don't know any different. But when your immune system all of a sudden goes from normal to abnormal, things get a little exciting. It'll either go undermodulated or it'll go overmodulated. And what I mean by that is this. In an undermodulated immune system, for example, if you didn't have these glycoproteins formed correctly, you didn't have the raw materials in your body to make these glycoproteins correctly, when the immune system comes in and reads these codes, instead of reading Larry's liver cell, it reads Harry's liver cell. It says Harry's liver cell. Who the heck is Harry? I don't know. Harry, Larry, it all kind of rhymes. I guess I'll just let it go. And it does. It lets it go. And that's good if you are, in fact, Larry's liver cell, but you just can't spell very well. But what if you are one of those abnormal cells? What if you're a cancer cell and the body doesn't attack? I don't know if you're aware that there are about 2,000 to 3,000 cancer cells or abnormal cells in your body created every day. Your body gets rid of them every day. It's because you create 150 billion cells, new cells, 150 billion new cells. You replace those 60 trillion cells over the course of about a year, 98, 99% of them. You'll replace all of them, and you do that every day, 150 billion at a time. You'll be a new you. You'll look a little bit older because we have oxidative stress, but cellularly, you'll be a new you. When you make that many cells, 150 billion, 2,000 or 3,000 go bad. It's just the chances of things going wrong, but the immune system comes in and identifies them and gets rid of them. It knows how to get rid of cancer. It knows how to get rid of abnormal cells. Does it every day until one day it stops. Why does it stop? In an overmodulated immune system, when it comes in and reads that glycoprotein and it reads Harry's liver cell, the immune response is this. This is like having a Monday today, and it just turns around and attacks. It's not putting up with misspelled or anything. It's just going to attack, so it does. Well, that's great if you are an abnormal cell. You want to get rid of it. But what if you're the myelin sheath protecting the neuron in a body? Welcome to multiple sclerosis. The body starts to attack you. What if you're cartilage in a joint? You're missing some of the glucosamine substrates that make up that joint. The body goes into an inflammatory state and starts to pound on you and attack you. That's called rheumatoid arthritis. The body starts to attack you. 2 weeks ago, it knew who you were and didn't attack you. Why does it start to attack you now? What has this got to do with our situation here? What we find is that 6 of these 8 sugars are no longer in our diet. We don't get these raw materials coming in the front door anymore. And what are some of the ramifications of that? Are there ramifications? Well, we didn't really understand that because we didn't know how these glycoproteins were structured, but we're starting to get a clearer picture, and that's what the study of glycobiology does. Well, one of the things that we do in our modern day is we eat a modern Western fast food, convenience-oriented, packaged, pre-processed diet, don't we? We're all about convenience. We want to arrive, fill her up, and get on our way because we're busy. But what happens when we've changed our diet so much to that? Instead of eating the raw fruits and vegetables and things that we did earlier, what happens as we eat more packaged, processed food? Well, anytime you cook food, not only when you process and package it, you have to add heat to kill the bad in order for it to store long enough. But when you do that, you also kill the good. You can't help but do that. You can destroy up to 85% of the nutritional value in a carrot by cooking it, by adding heat. It's the heat that kills it. So it looks like a carrot, but it doesn't have the nutritional value that you needed. When you refine food, for example, wheat, we take the husk and we remove it from the kernel. We separate the kernel from the husk. The kernel is what makes that wonderful flour and pastries and breads and yummy food. But guess what was in the husk? That's where one of these sugars, the mannose, is. So we pull it off, make a mash, feed it to horses. We have incredibly healthy horses in this country. Green harvesting is when we harvest our fruits and vegetables. We were doing this to solve a logistics problem in the 40s and 50s of how to transport fruits and vegetables from the San Joaquin Valley in California to other states that don't have fruits and vegetables. So how did we solve that? Well, we couldn't harvest them ripened because they would rot on the way. So we would start to harvest them green. They're picked a couple weeks early. They're still green. They're hard little stones. We transport them, get them to where their destination is, and then we use ethylene gas in the back of these stores and ripen them up. And the green tomatoes will turn red. You've seen the green bananas. They'll turn yellow. We'll set the green ones out when we run out of the yellow ones. And they'll ripen up. But anytime you remove a fruit or vegetable from the vine, what have you done to it? You've severed it from the source of its nutrition, haven't you? Now, it will develop some nutrition that's inherent, that's already in there, but any other nutrients that were coming from the vine as it ripens, you've negated. It will never receive that nutrition, and it will never develop in the fruit. So the nutritional value of those fruits and vegetables would be impacted. You're starting to see that because on the recommendations of how many fruits and vegetables you should eat, what has been changing? It used to be 3 servings of fruits and vegetables. Then it went 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables. Now it's 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables. If you want to talk antioxidant support to reduce that aging process in your body, 17 to 21 servings of fruits and vegetables. Let's go back to 5 to 9. 5 to 9 servings. Are you eating that? I know better, and I don't. Only 11% of the population claim to be eating that much. It's just hard to do it. We're traveling all the time. It's just hard to eat 5 to 9 servings, even though we know we should. We do our best. Why do you have to eat so many? Did the minimum RDA level change? No, it didn't change. But what took 3 servings now takes 5 to 9. What does that mean to us? It means that the value, the nutritional value in each fruit or vegetable is not the same, because it takes more of it to reach the same standard. In terms of vitamin A, your grandparents could eat 1 orange, you have to eat 10. And it's just not possible to eat that much to get in your body. We live in a very oxidative, stressful world in terms of all of the chemicals that are bombarding us, chemicals that you can smell or not smell. The effect on the liver and the processing of that, the body tries to get them out through excrement, through the sweat, through mucus, but it can't get rid of everything. And so you develop, the body just struggles to get rid of that load, and it'll store what it can't in adipose tissue, in fat tissue. That's where it stores it, because it can't get rid of it. And I just want to say one last thing about the primary versus backup system. You have a backup system in your body that from glucose, you can make all these sugars. Now the theory was glucose is all you need. So you should be able to be healthy by eating 20 Twinkies and don't worry about it, right? Now logically that didn't make sense to anyone, but it took a while for science to catch up. No, that's not right. You can't eat 20 Twinkies and be healthy. Several people have tried that. It doesn't work. So you have a backup system, though, that can do that, because you're supposed to eat this fruit and vegetable when it's vine ripened. In the season thereof, when it's vine ripened, is when you're supposed to eat it raw. That's when the nutrition is at its highest. Now, what do you do when you go through a period of winter or starvation and you can't get that fruit and vegetable? Well, and so that you don't die, the body keeps you alive during those periods. It has a backup system until you get back into the primary system and you eat it again. But with the diet that we have in this country, we've turned the backup system into the primary system. And we are burning the backup system out. When you lose some of the enzymes, it takes 30-some enzymes to change glucose into fructose. When you miss some of those enzymes, the glucose doesn't quite change into fructose. When these nutrients are not there, the glycoprotein structures are not quite what they used to be. So the effect on the body is a little bit of communication confusion. So my example is when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, my first job was to be a Minuteman nuclear missile launch control commander. And so we would leave our facility, our base, and they'd helicopter us out to a nuclear facility. I'd go down 60 feet underground. We'd perform an inspection in the equipment room before I went to pull my alert in the launch control center for 24 hours. And we'd go over here, and one of the things I'd look for is what is the site on primary power? Is commercial power available, or are we running the backup generator? If we were on the backup, there'd be a little red tag, and the maintenance person had put the time the backup generator had started. You were only allowed to run that backup generator for a fixed amount of hours. At the end of those hours, you had to bring the site down if commercial power didn't come back, because the backup generator would run out of gas and create unstable power. You do not run a nuclear facility on unstable power. You will bring the site down until you have good clean power, and then you'll bring it up. You do not bring a nuclear facility down without getting a lot of attention. So we were very cognizant of what was there, and we always wanted commercial power to be available. My question to you is this: who puts the red tag on your backup system when your backup system has been running too long? When it's not doing the job it was designed to do. For whatever reason, it doesn't do its job. When will you know? Well, you'll never know until a symptom develops. And by the time it moves from the cellular level, where it's broken down, and gets up to a level that you can be cognizant of, and you say, oh my gosh, that's not good, then that symptom has just poked its head above the waterline, but believe me, underneath the waterline is a huge piece underwater that you just didn't know about. So that iceberg can affect you for a long time. What do we see in terms of statistics in our day? We are seeing an exponential increase in autoimmune diseases. We're seeing in the last 30 years things like chronic fatigue syndrome, lupus, fibromyalgia, diabetes. All of these exponential increases, in particular diabetes up from 30 to 246 million in the last 3 decades. In the United States, the last estimates I saw was that 1 out of 3 in the US are diabetic or pre-diabetic, predisposed to diabetes. 1 in 3 in this country. And it's happening younger and younger. You can see the statistics down here from the 1990s. That's the last full decade that I have published statistics on. And look at how younger and younger it's affecting. In fact, we changed type 2 diabetes. It used to be called adult onset diabetes. And we changed the name because it was hard to explain to a 12-year-old that you had adult onset diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is the autoimmune diabetes. That's where you have something that goes wrong in your health, usually when you're young, and your body's response to that, it goes into an inflammatory response and it starts to attack you. And the part that it starts to attack is related to your pancreas, the insulin-producing cells. And so you become incapable of producing insulin. And that type 1 is an autoimmune disease. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States for men. The statistic I was startled to learn was for men, #1 killer in the United States. For men who have heart disease, what is the first symptom that you get? Well, for half of you, it's a heart attack. And because in this country, we can save your life because we have an amazing ambulatory system to get you from wherever you have that heart attack to a hospital where we are staffed with the best facilities, the best doctors and nursing staff and emergency response staff. We will save your life if we can be saved in this country. But the other half, the other 50%, your first symptom is death. You didn't know you had heart disease, but that was all, you got no warning. You're dead. In terms of women, the same kind of scenario, the statistic is actually worse. For women, the statistic is 62%. First symptom that you have heart disease is that death has taken place. Cancer, in the US in the 1940s, about 2% of the population was diagnosed with cancer or would be diagnosed with cancer. In the 1960s, that had climbed all the way up to 20%. 1 in 5 would be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. President Nixon declared war on cancer in the 1969-1970 years and funded organizations to target, to eradicate cancer, to stop that trend. Are we winning that war in this country? We win a lot of battles, but are we winning the war? We are not winning the war because in 2006, the statistic now is 1 in 3, 33% of the population of this country will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And just to show you the exponential nature of the curve, from 2006 to 2010, statistic is now 1 in 2 for men, 50%. 1 in 3 for women. Breast cancer is 1 in 8 for women. So the statistics continue to climb. There is no question in this country that this country is the best for trauma care. We are, if you have a neonatal situation, if you have a brain aneurysm, if you have any kind of an accident, break a leg, this is the country you want to be in. The care is top notch. You don't want to be anywhere else. But in terms of chronic care, chronic disease. What is chronic disease? That's the disease that doesn't kill you today. It doesn't kill you tomorrow or next week or next month. But once you get into this, you just kind of spiral down and down and down. And we manage your care till the last day of it. And it's called sick care, and we will take care of you and make you as comfortable as we can. In this country, where do we rate in terms of sick care, in terms of chronic disease? We provide wonderful care, but in terms of chronic disease and having the diseases, where do we rank? 72nd. Now, remember those freshmen, kiddos? They're 15 years old. They're not even half a billion seconds old. Those kiddos cannot even name 71 countries in the world, let alone the 71 countries ahead of us. What are they? Italy and France, number 1 and number 2. Countries like Mexico and Bosnia and Sri Lanka, they're all ahead of us in terms of their care, all of Europe. Ahead of care for chronic disease in this compared to our country. Is it a matter of money? Well, this is in 2007 dollars. We spend in the U.S. $7,290, and again, that's 3-year-old figures. Number 2 is Switzerland at $4,400, just a little over half of what we spend. That's the second-rated country in terms of who spends money. By far, the U.S. spends more money on health care. But are we getting the bang for the buck that we should expect for that investment? We don't seem to. The Brits, who spend less than half, less than $3,000 per person, are healthier than the Americans in every major health category: cancer, diabetes, stroke, you name it. Why? Why are they healthier? That's the question. When you look at countries like Italy and France and Europe, how do they buy their food? Do they buy a lot of prepackaged processed food, or do they go to the market every day? How do they handle stress? How do they exercise? There's no magic silver bullet, but there are several factors that we ought to be looking at in terms of turning this around. We are definitely on the wrong curve in the United States. So what do glycoproteins do for us? Some of the functions I mentioned, they're responsible for how cells attach to each other. They're responsible for how cells communicate or talk, how the immune system talks. Insulin, a hormone, for example, will be released from the pancreas, and it will come and dock on that glycoprotein, and it will send a message through that communication pathway into the interior of the cell and turn a gene on or off. What happens when it can't do that? The cell is like it becomes hard of hearing, becomes insulin resistant, and so the cell is like saying, what? What are you saying? And so the pancreas will generate more insulin, cover more glycoprotein structures in order to get the message across and get the cell to do what it's supposed to do. Fertilization, antibodies, glycoproteins are involved in all of this. In fact, every antibody, which is what the body creates to attack foreign invaders, every single one of those is a glycoprotein and how it attaches to these foreign invaders. All the collagen or connective tissue in your body, the fleshy part, the lubricants, we call them mucins or mucus, immunoglobulins, and on and on and on, all glycoproteins. What are the disease states related to this, to glycoproteins that are involved in the process? I won't talk about all of this, but I want to touch base up here on the first one. The attachment of neutrophils and lymphocytes to the walls of small blood vessels. What does that mean? That they attach through these glycoproteins. What they're talking about here is they're talking about heart disease. What underlies heart disease? Inflammation. For the last 10 years, inflammation has been the #1 indicator for heart disease. Inflammation, not cholesterol. The American Medical Association, the Journal of American Medical Association has made it clear in all their publications, inflammation is what we are trying to lower. And and the pharmaceuticals are trying to find inflammatory reducing drugs to do that. Why is it not the cholesterol? Are you hearing that on television? You're still not getting that message because there is a huge investment, $157 million spent per day on pharmaceutical advertising. You will not hear that message about it's not the cholesterol. We have statin drugs that can reduce your cholesterol. Not a problem. They work. But it's not the cholesterol. It's the inflammation that we're really worried about. Why are we not worried about it? Because 72% of the people who die from a heart attack have good cholesterol. Not a very good indicator, is it? So it's inflammation, and everybody knows that, but the messaging just doesn't always get out to folks. But glycoproteins are related in all of these things, the aggregation of platelets, influenza, AIDS, we mentioned AIDS already, bacterial infections like urinary tract infections, RA, the altered glycosylation of the immunoglobulin G group, and on and on. This is the book, Harper's Biochemistry textbook, Robert K. Murray right up here at the top. Chapter 46 is the chapter on glycoproteins. It's about a 700-page book. I found it fascinating, wonderful to read, but it's not on the top the New York Times bestseller list. A lot of chemistry. You got to like biology and chemistry a lot. But that chapter in that book talks about these sugars. It wasn't published. The chapter didn't occur in the book until 1996 was the first edition that had a chapter on glycoproteins. So again, why doesn't a medical professional know about it? It's not because they don't want to know about it. It just was so new, it wasn't in the book till 1996. So if you have an older healthcare professional, they may not be aware. That's why we teach these classes, and we encourage them to get continuing medical education through Proevity, and so that they can learn about the latest science. And they can learn that. This is a quote from the book, Harper's Biochemistry. I put it in here because I like this particular paragraph. I won't read the whole thing, but they are talking about the backup system, the enzymes in human tissue that make these sugars from glucose. But buried in this particular paragraph, it talks about that these sugars, it has led to the development of glyconutrient supplements. Now that's in this book. We've known about vitamins and minerals for about 100 years in this country, and the American Medical Association has only in the last 10 years or so been recommending that you have to supplement with vitamins and minerals. And this science has not been out hardly 15 to 20 years, and it's already in the book. So I found that interesting and hopeful. Why doesn't your doctor know about it? We mentioned that it was first published in 1996. We teach biochemistry toward the front end of their training because if they cannot handle biochemistry, if they don't understand the natural physiology in the human body, how enzymes work to create, how these pathways are created, how a drug will kill an enzyme and block a pathway or block a pain synapse, or what the repercussions are of that, then they can't be a doctor, because you're going to prescribe and interrupt a lot of this human physiology. So you got to understand it. So it's toward the beginning, which means that, yeah, the first chapter was in 1996, but they probably needed to have gotten out of school and through internship and into practice about 2002, 2004. So you're talking about a pretty new healthcare professional. They're the only ones that had a chance to see it in the book. And it's one chapter of about 53 in the book. How come they don't hear about it now? Well, there are 7,000 articles printed in medical literature every day. If they were to read 2 articles every day, which would be wonderful, and some of these articles are very statistical, very chemistry oriented, they're a little boring. Even I will say that. If they were to do that 2 a day, at the end of a year, they'd be 35 centuries behind in their reading program. It just cannot be done. It is too much information. How come they don't hear about it in continuing education credit seminars? Who funds the majority of those seminars? Pharmaceuticals fund the majority of those seminars. It's not illegal. It's their business. They create drugs to impact disease states. So they'll talk about a particular disease state, and in another room they'll talk about the drug that was developed to impact that disease state. And that's how it's done. But just because you don't hear about broccoli in that presentation, or you hear anything about nutrition, doesn't mean that nutrition or broccoli or cauliflower or tomatoes don't have an amazing impact on the body. They're just not drugs. And because you can't patent a natural occurring substance like a broccoli, there is no money in it. You have to, in order to patent it, you would have to tweak it, the chemistry to make a drug of it, you'd have to tweak it and make it synthetic. And that tweak, to make it different, had better be advantageous. And then you can patent it. So if you cannot do those things, you will not hear about any natural substance. The first natural substance I want to talk about is human breast milk. You can't patent that. It's just available to everyone. What are the impacts? When my wife and I were having our children, the doctor told us that we should formula feed our children. That was the theory back in the day. Formula was better than breast milk. They could draw you the protein structures. They could look at this and look at that and look at all these ingredients. That's much better. We proved it. But Angie said, well, that's nice, but she listened actually to her mom and grandma, and they said to breastfeed your babies, so she did. And now, multiple studies, 18-year longitudinal studies have been published out. No one argues this point at all anymore. In fact, there are human breast milk banks so that babies can receive human breast milk from mothers who are not maybe generating that milk. Amazing change of events. 180 out from what we used to believe. These studies have shown that breastfed babies have stronger immune systems, better intestinal health, better brain development, cognitive abilities. There's no question of the benefit of human breastfed babies. And what's different about this? Well, human breast milk contains 5 of these 8 biologically beta-bonded sugars. Here are the 5 sugars, and the other 3 can be made from the precursors of those sugars. These chains of beta-bonded sugars were originally thought to be of no benefit to the body. Remember the paradigm? Sugar is just used for energy production, right? Do you get enough sugar in the modern Western fast food diet? Of anything you get, sugar is not a problem. So you should be among the healthiest of people in the world. But unfortunately, that paradigm is not quite right. Sugar is not just used for energy production. And in human breast milk, you start to see the impact. 1/3 of the milk solids in human breast milk are these sugars. That's higher than the percentage of protein. Is that huge? And so the process of having a baby, if you have a baby naturally, the baby is delivered, the placenta continues to beat. The doctor does not cut the cord between the baby and the placenta until the placenta stops pulsating, beating. Because as soon as you cut it, you've removed the baby from the vine. And you've cut its access to its mother's nutrition. So that baby is now standalone. That immune system within that baby will get no other support from its mother at that moment, and it will have to face the cold, cruel world with its immune system. Unless the mother breastfeeds the baby. If the mother breastfeeds the baby, then for the next months to year, 2 years, 3 years, however long the baby is breastfed, will the baby get these particular sugars that are used for immune system support. That's how they get it. And then once the baby is old enough, then the baby starts to eat, hopefully, the food that contains these nutrients, and there you have it. Amazing system. I'm going to talk about a few of these individual sugars. And so we'll just talk about a few of them, some of the studies that have been done on these individual sugars. Mannose is the first sugar I just want to mention. It comes from aloe vera. Aloe vera is a plant that down here in the South you're aware of. I was a Yankee, had no idea what aloe vera was, but they told me, and then my dad later showed me, that if you cut one of these stalks and you put that gel on a cut or a burn, the body will get better faster. And it's a proven thing. The body's immune system responds to this aloe vera, and it gets, the healing process goes faster. It's a jump start to the immune system. We've known about it for thousands of years. Alexander the Great carried it in a battle, treated his men with aloe vera plants. Everybody knows. In the 1980s, there was a huge aloe vera craze in this country. You still see some of the marketing hype about aloe vera. We were putting aloe vera in potions and lotions and shampoo and everything, and wow. But it didn't do anything when you tested it. It didn't work. So eventually it fizzled out. How come it didn't work? Well, there was a researcher finally paid to go investigate. And remember, no one was looking at the sugars in plants because sugars are only used for energy production. They have no immune system support value. Well, guess where he found the immune system support value in aloe vera? It was in the sugars, the carbohydrate, called mannose. And so he was able to extricate the mannose molecule, and this is what he found. He patented this process. Remember, you can't patent aloe vera. It's a natural product. But what he did was he patented how he got the mannose out of the aloe vera and stabilized it. Because this is what you found when you extracted the mannose in a matter of hours. Because it was a sugar, once it's exposed to air, the enzymes would destroy it. Basically eat it, get rid of it. It wasn't there anymore. So they were putting it in these things, but after a couple of hours after being exposed to air, the mannose was gone. That's why it didn't work. But he stabilized it, patented that process, and he did what Grandma understood but couldn't explain. She told you not to keep one of these stalks all week. You went and cut a new stalk and put it on. How come? Because it doesn't work if you don't. I don't know. But she knew all she needed to know. Now the science has caught up as to why that is. Mannose is also used as the primary sugar in glycoprotein cell receptors. It also modulates the immune system by activating macrophages. This purple thing is not it doesn't look like a white blood cell, but it's been stained. You'll see the red blood corpuscles, but this is a macrophage. And macrophages eat, phagocytize debris and foreign material and destroy it, remove it from the body. Mannose is basically the gasoline in the gas tank of the macrophage. We will count how many white blood cells you have, because the more white blood cells you have, that's indicative of maybe a disease state going on. What you also would like to have that we are not able to provide is how active those white blood cells are. Do you have white blood cells that are like this? Somebody get that? Will somebody get that? Or do you want macrophages that are like this? Attack. Did you see the movie Up? Do you remember that movie with a dog? Mm-hmm. And every time anybody said squirrel, that's what you want in a macrophage. You want it focused on its job, and you want it moving to what it's got to do. Mannose also prevents bacterial infections by binding competitively to the lectins. And I've got a picture because this is a lot of words that this study talks about. The bacteria, the lectins on a bacteria are these hairy protrusions. And they're trying to get down to a glycoprotein and grab on here so that they can manipulate this communication pathway and kidnap the apparatus inside that body and make you sick, infect you. But what happens if you have a lot of this raw material in your body, so that not only do you make healthy glycoprotein structures, but you have a lot of this free-floating sugar molecules out in the interstitial fluid. When the bacteria comes into and it tries to get down to the cell membrane, it runs into all these sugar molecules, and the lectins just grab onto one. Ooh, one, oh, God. And they all fill up. Now, the bacterial lectins are not smart enough to know whether or not they're attached to you. And when they get down here, they don't know to let go and reattach to something that will anchor them to a cell so that they can do their dirty work. So when they all fill up, what happens to them? They just pass through the interstitial fluid and pass out of your body. Welcome to nature's natural flu shot. That's what they're saying. This nutrition will keep you from being less sick or sick at all in terms of this bacterial infection, because it will fill those lectins up. And we've done it with chickens. We've added mannose to the drinking water. And when we do that, we get reductions. Look at this. This is salmonella. We've done it with E. coli bacteria in mice. But in the chickens, we had 50 to 100% reduction in salmonella poisoning by adding this nutrient to the water that they drank. Is that not huge? That's like pharmaceutical grade protection with no side effects. It's not toxic. So it doesn't hurt the chickens. Fucose is abundant in seaweed. You cannot do the sushi bar enough times to get enough of this in your body. You've got to have a constant diet of seaweed in order to get the benefits of this particular sugar. It increases free radical scavenging. This is an antioxidant ability that allows provides electrons to slow that process of aging down. It also stimulates adult stem cell formation. It turns out in this particular study that adult stem cells are the cells that create other cells. You have heart cells, and you have liver cells, and you have bone marrow. Those are adult stem cells that replicate and create other cells for you, more bone marrow. As you get older, you have less of those adult stem cells as you age. If you have these molecules in your body, then what happens is the body creates more adult stem cells, exponentially more, a lot more, which again can impact the aging process in the body. So they were looking at the formation, but fucoidins are implicated in terms of stimulating the body and stimulating the creation of these adult stem cells. The sugar glucosamine and acetylglucosamine, you have a receptor on the thyroid looking for this particular sugar, like you have receptors in the gut looking for mannose and galactose and these other sugars. You have one on the thyroid looking for this sugar. Glucosamine is used. It inhibits the metabolic breakdown of cartilage in the joint. I've got an amazing study right here that was published from Dr. Demetrio at the University of California, Irvine. This was published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry in November 2007. Did anyone read that? Most people have not read that. But it was an amazing article. Look what was published. This sugar, abbreviated NAG, suppresses the growth and function of abnormal T cells responsible for autoimmune attack in MS and type 1 diabetes, preventing this attack of the body on itself. Some of the things that we were talking about. This finding shows the potential of using a dietary supplement to help treat autoimmune diseases. This sugar-based supplement inhibits the cells that attack the body. That's from the study from Dr. Demetrio. In another study, related study, there was a 2-year study using this sugar with children who had treatment-resistant autoimmune inflammatory bowel disease. That means that the standard treatment did not impact their disease state. So they were put on a 2-year course of this particular sugar, and 75% of those children had statistically significant improvement as a result of that. Would that be important? Just huge. Sialic acid doesn't even sound like something you'd want to eat. It sounds dangerous. But it affects the viscosity of mucous membranes in the respiratory, reproductive, and intestinal tract. That is like 1020, 1030 oil in a car, 1040. It's the viscosity, meaning the fluidity. If your mucus is too runny, it won't carry the waste out. If it's too thick, it won't carry the waste out. You'll be kind of constipated in the intestinal tract. So this sugar affects the viscosity of that mucus. Here's an amazing study. I won't read the whole thing, but just a few of the things. This was published 13 May 2008 in the journal called Science. It's out of the University of New Hampshire Glycomic Center. I don't know if you understand there are glycomic centers across the United States. New Hampshire is a very small state. It has a glycomic center. They study these sugars. In the science world, when I make this presentation, they already understand this. They're like, okay, so what's new? But 9 out of 10 of the rest of us have never heard anything about this. What they were able to identify was they identified a specific carbohydrate structure that confers anti-inflammatory activity to a glycoprotein antibody that could lead to improved treatment of autoimmune diseases like lupus and RA. Not only lupus, RA, but asthma and other autoimmune diseases. It relieves the inflammatory state. Remember I told you all the emphasis is now toward reducing inflammatory states because inflammation is what underlies all of the disease states, all of the autoimmune disease states that we have. That's where everything is focused currently in the research. How do we reduce that inflammatory state so that the body doesn't attack itself? So this natural sugar, they took that sialic acid, they converted it and concentrated it, and they fed it to arthritic mice, and they had 30 times more effective than current standard treatment, intravenous IG. 30 times more effective. Now, One thing I want to say with all these studies, mice, chicken, do you think any of these studies will get picked up for human trials? What does it take to go from animal studies to human trials? It takes millions of dollars. It takes a decade of research to move this from animal studies to human trials. Is there an incentive to move a natural substance from animal trials to human trials? Is there any money in it?
No.
There is no money in it until you can make it synthetic. Do you understand why these studies stay over here in the science arena and never make it over into the medical arena at all? That's what causes it. That's how the system is set up to function in this country. So it stays here. But I just want you to know those studies are out there. These sugars have amazing potential in their natural form. This center, this glycomic center, is also developing tools and protocols using multidimensional mass spectrometry to determine the structure and functional relationships of these carbohydrates. I mentioned before they're bush-shaped. If you thought the Genome Project was difficult, you've not seen the Glycome Project. It is thousands of times more difficult to unravel these bush-shaped complex sugar structures, because every angle means something different to the body, and they form these incredibly long sugar chains. So it's going to take a while before they can be made synthetic, but once they are, you'll see it all over. The Glycomic Center in New Hampshire is also demystifying the carbohydrate connections in cancer that contribute to metastatic growth and into avian flu. Avian flu is bird flu as opposed to the swine flu. This is the flu that you really should be worried about, because once this one can attach to the sialic acid on the epithelial cells, the residue here in your throat, once it unlocks that code and goes from bird to you, then we're talking a huge impact, probably hundreds of thousands to millions of people being impacted by this particular flu. This is the flu that we're worried about. Carbohydrates are the glue that pull things together. It will have a huge impact on our health in respect to immune regulation. I hope we've made the case about the impact of these particular sugars, what the science has shown. I've only got 4 more slides. 3 are on oncology and cancer. This one I just want to preface. If you ever supplement with vitamins or minerals, or you add sugar molecules into your supplementation, you have to have a paradigm shift. These natural things are not drugs. You will not feel them in your body. Food, you don't feel what it does for you. It just does things at the cellular level. A drug will interrupt normal human physiology, and you'll feel that. It's food. There's no toxicity level. There's no LD50 level on anything that is natural. So what you have to understand is you have to take enough. And what I mean by take enough is, I hope you understand that everybody pretty much in the United States is in some sort of disease state. You either know it or you will, with the statistics that we've talked about. You have to have enough to get above the disease state. If you don't get above the disease state and allow the immune system to do its job with this raw material, then the disease state wins. So you have to get enough in. So there is an amount that you have to get in. You also have to take it for long enough. And the reason you have to take it for long enough is because of this term called apoptosis. Cells destroy or program themselves to die. Those 150 billion cells that come on board every day, they're replacing the ones that died. And so in order to bring a healthy cell on board, you have to have this nutrition in. 150 billion new cells today, tomorrow, the next day. What if you miss a day? Oh well, 150 billion cells. Maybe they're those cells that were important to you. You have to be consistent, and you have to do it for long enough. Red blood cells, the red blood corpuscles, are replaced in 4 months. Every red blood corpuscle gets wore out going through the capillaries. They die, the immune system removes them, and new ones are generated from the bone marrow. If you have good raw material, then those cells will be created as healthy cells. And when they come on board, it will take 4 months to replace them all. Skin cells are weeks. Bone cells can be up to a year or longer. It takes time. But once you get enough of those cells on board, then the immune system all of a sudden seems to come awake if you have some sort of disease state and goes on alert and says, okay, and starts communicating and taking action. It knows what to do when it can communicate. In terms of cancer, where are we headed with cancer? This is from Harper's Illustrated Biochemistry. The difference in oligosaccharide chains, these sugar chains, could affect adhesive interactions between cancer cells and their normal parent tissue cells, contributing to metastasis. Just one of the quotes out of Harper's. There was an oncology study done up in North Dakota that I just want to mention, because lots of times when people are concerned about cancer and chemo and radiation, what's the effect of adding good nutrition to your body if that makes the cells stronger and healthier, and you're trying to kill cancer cells? Maybe this is a bad idea when you're fighting cancer. Do you want to add this? Well, this doc up in North Dakota, small oncology department, he had a placebo group and a group that was on this. And so he had 4 findings as he did this study. His 4 findings were this. He answered the number 1 question. It does not inhibit tumor cell destruction by radiation and chemo. It actually enhanced it. Why did the immune system get rid of the cancer cells in the group that had this supplementation? Well, because all of a sudden the immune system could read what it was doing. It could do what it needed to do, and it did it. Makes sense? It also did this, which we figured it would do. It protected normal cells from radiation and cytotoxic damage. I don't know if you understand that when you radiate, you harm all the cells in the pathway of the radiation when you try to reach the cancer cells. The radiation has to be turned up high enough to kill the cancer, but you don't want it too high that it kills all of the cells in between. We have no way of tagging just cancer cells. You will harm every cell in the pathway. So you want the healthy cells to be as strong as they can be to resist the bombardment. In chemo, it affects all the cells in your body. You don't want it to be too poisonous that it kills too many good cells, but it's got to be strong enough to kill the bad. It's a balancing act. It's a hard act to get right. But he saw protection for those normal cells. He didn't expect this one. It induced reductions in tumor mass and malignancies that were resistant to all standard treatment. There are many treatments. There are only a few cancers that respond to particular standard treatment very well. And he got reductions in ones that didn't, which was a wonderful thing. And finally, the last one, probably the least of the conclusions, it improved the quality of life for people that were experiencing toxicity due to the radiation and chemo effects. That means hair loss. It means nauseousness. And that's not like really important compared to the rest of them, unless it's you. Then it gets really important, because it's hard to go through that process. This is a press release from the National Institute of Health. August 2007, they announced a $15.5 million 5-year initiative to study the glycobiology of cancer. I've been in the field for quite a number of years, and it took me a year to find this press release. So it wasn't just out there for all of us to hear, but that's a huge thing. The National Institute of Health is the governing organizational body. Underneath them, the NIH, is the National Cancer Institute, and they're targeted with developing treatments for cancer. Look what the National Cancer Institute director said. I quote from the press release, these 2 bold things. Scientists have long recognized that certain sugar structures which are attached to protein and lipid molecules may be important as markers for cancer development. While this area has compelling scientific interest, its biological and chemical complexities have often discouraged investigation. Today, with the advent of advanced technologies to conduct protein and carbohydrate chemistry, research into this intriguing area has experienced renewed interest. You don't study what you can't see. And we could not see these sugars until really recently. Did we have any tools that we could start to sequence the molecules and start to get a look at their structure and their function, just breaking the surface. And so that's what he says, and you surely don't fund it if you can't see it. So it's just being developed, it's brand new, and these are the 7 universities and study centers that are going to be looking at these particular cancers. And I just want you to notice the particular cancers, because these are the ones that typically we have the most difficult time having any kind of impact upon them. They're generally terminal. They're melanoma, breast, ovarian, lung, prostate, colon, and pancreatic. And so we are starting to do something different than what we have done before. We've won some battles in the past, but radiation, surgery, chemo, we're losing the battle. And so we're starting to allocate funds. Now, it's not a lot of funding, especially when you pass it across 7 universities, but it's something. And this science is valid, and we're awaiting and very hopeful that things will start to move as we start to look at the glycobiology of cancer.
Well, you can see how grateful I am that my husband decided to put himself into this science world. You know, when my friend said to me, have you investigated glycobiology? Have you ever looked into glycobiology? I rolled my eyes like, oh, please, like there could be anything, something else that I had not seen that could be impactful to me. I thought surely one of my 6 doctors, my 4 specialists, my nutritionist, somebody would be able to direct me. And she shared with me her experience, but she was so new to understanding this technology herself, or these sugar nutrients herself, that she really couldn't help me enough. And so I began to look into it because I felt desperate for something to change my situation. For many years when our kids were growing up, we would go to take them to a nursing home. No particular reason other than their grandparents lived far away, and we thought, well, they probably enjoy kids singing to them, and it was something good we could do together as a family. So after church, we'd get in the van and we'd go to a nursing home. And for 6 years, we went every week. And I had already been dealing with things in my own immune system. And I would see these folks in this nursing home every Sunday, and I started to question, how come this won't be me? Do I have to just be lucky for this not to be me? And I wondered, what happened to these people? How come these people are here in really serious situations? No one looked vibrant, no one looked happy, no one looked healthy. And I knew what was happening to me, and I was beginning to decline every year in the quality of my life. And I didn't have my chronic issues in either side of my family genes. So I was getting more and more concerned that it was going to be me in this situation. And I'll never forget the reality check that I had the day that I went to one of my the pharmacists at the Air Force Academy. I was standing in line, didn't want to be there, was feeling a tremendous amount of pain, very uncomfortable, very scared for my future. And I picked up my prescription, grateful for the medicines that I had that got me through the days. But the pharmacist, who was a retired pharmacist who was just volunteering that day, he leaned through the window and he told me, he said, exact quote, "Honey, you cannot take this much." And I stood there and I started crying. And I asked him, what should I do? I did not want to take this medicine, but I had to. And I didn't know a way out. I was trying so many things. I had been eating right. We had, my goodness, we ate from our garden. We planted every spring. We always ate from scratch. I always cooked from scratch because it was the way I was raised. We didn't eat out. We certainly didn't do fast foods very much because we couldn't afford to take our whole family out to eat all the time. I had everything in place that I could see. We exercised. I don't do even sodas. You know, lots of these things were in place, and still I was becoming more and more compromised every year. So here he is telling me I can't take this much. He had no idea that we were going out of town tomorrow, and I'd already gone to the Walgreens pharmacy to get the exact same prescription that I had gotten from Dr. B. I had already seen Dr. A, saw Dr. B, got the exact same prescription because I knew that I could not get through the trip if I didn't have enough of the drug to help me. And when he told me that I couldn't take this much, I wondered what was going to happen to me. If not today, tomorrow, the next day, next year, next 5 years from now, when was it going to be a serious problem? It was already feeling very serious to me. And so then we started looking into the statistics about that, because I wondered about how much of a risk I was with the drugs that I had been taking for so long. And I didn't know. I didn't know that there was so much risk. I didn't have really any big side effects from them. I just didn't know that there was so much risk and danger with too much drug for too long. And when we learned that 800 people die in the United States every single day from properly prescribed medicine, I was shocked. And again, what's 800 people a day? I didn't know them. It wasn't my neighbor. It wasn't me. But if you look at it in another industry, take it out of the medical industry and put it in another industry like the airline industry, let's just say 4 jumbo jets or 4 planes crashed today in the United States and approximately 800 people were killed. Wouldn't we all be gripped to the TV? We'd all be in shock what had just happened, to have 4 planes crash and all those people die. Wouldn't we be gripped? Well, what if that happened tomorrow? And another 4 planes crashed and 800 approximately people died. We wouldn't believe it. All of us would be talking, questioning what's going on. What if that happened every single day in the United States? The 4 planes crashed and all the people on board died? Would we as American citizens take this? Would we say, no problem, let's get on the plane? Of course not. We would all be up in arms and we'd say, you fix this system or we will not fly. And in fact, the industry would come to a screeching halt, wouldn't it? I mean, no question, no one would fly when that is what they're doing. They're having all these plane crashes and all these people dying every day. Well, you take that and you say, well, that's happening in the medical world, and people like me had no clue. I didn't know there were any other options. I thought that I had to do this because it was the only thing, and it worked. It helped me to get through the days. But the problem was I wasn't getting better. And they didn't say I'd get better. They just said, but I believed I could be better. In fact, one day I said to my husband, something has got to be missing. What is wrong with me? And I was shocked, literally shocked, that I could not be directed to a science that could impact my life to the degree that it has been impacted. That my doctors, 6 doctors, 4 specialists, and my nutritionist, who I paid $400 a month to and was taking 50 supplements. Wow. How did I know that any of those things were helping me or benefiting me? I didn't know. I did not know because I continued to decline. It wasn't until I had an idea that there was a science available to us of sugar nutrients that I could actually start incorporating into my daily diet that things started changing. And I started seeing my immune system wake up and started doing the job it was designed and created to do. And so you can see why I'm a little passionate. This was my life. And nobody cared about my life like I did in my family. My grandchildren were being born and I could not go see them because I was too compromised. And now I have a life. We've traveled 9 weeks already this summer. We've done this every year since 2004. Because one person can make a difference in my estimation. One person told me, you should look into glycobiology. Have you ever investigated that? Maybe it could make a difference for you. Well, I could not believe or comprehend what she was saying could really bring me to where I am today. I will forever be grateful that she said, look into glycobiology. Maybe it can make a difference for you. And that's why we do what we do. We hope if you are here as a healthcare professional, we hope that you will springboard, get some continuing medical education. Allow this class to be an overview for you so that you will do some serious investigation and to be a blessing to those that come to see you. And if you are an average person, well, do some homework yourself and let it be a blessing to you and your family. And all of my grandchildren know every day when their mothers are finished nursing them, every day they are incorporating sugar nutrients into their diet. It has been such an honor and a pleasure to be with you tonight, today, this afternoon, and to be here with you in your beautiful state. And we appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. And thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you another time.